Dear friends of Hellenic Studies, welcome to the next chapter in our continuing series of exploring Hellenism. My name is Tula Christopoulos, and I'm a longtime member of the Friends of Hellenic Studies of Stockton University. I'm also assistant to Dr. Tom Papadimitriou, who is a professor of history at Stockton and is also the executive director of the Dean C. and Zoe S. Pappas Interdisciplinary Center for Hellenic Studies. In the opening slide of our logo, you heard Greek folklorist Domna Samiou singing a traditional Cycladic tune. And what she's singing about is the Aegean Sea that gets its source from all rivers and streams on the island. And not only does it take the water from the island into the sea, but it also pulls all the young men to go out to sea. And that's just stressing the importance of the Aegean Sea to the surrounding island, which at one time the major industry was shipping and fishing. Friends of Hellenic Studies is an auxiliary group consisting of Stockton and local community members whose mission it is to promote and help strengthen the Stockton Hellenic Studies program, to enable Hellenic Studies students to acquire knowledge first developed by ancient, classical, Byzantine, and contemporary Greek scholars, and to do this through annual fundraising events which fund scholarships, student and faculty financial support for study abroad to Greece, Cyprus, and now Italy, lecture series, symposia, and cultural activities. The Reverend Dr. Demetrius Konstantelos was one of the first professors to be hired at what was then Stockton State College. He recognized the extraordinary impact the ancient Greeks had on the development of Western civilization, including philosophers, mathematicians, architects, physicians, playwrights, philosophers, musicians, artists, and historians. He wanted the teaching of that valuable knowledge to be perpetuated. So over 20 years ago, he helped create Hellenic Studies as a curriculum at Stockton, which is continuously growing strong. Exploring Hellenism is a program that grew out of Hellenic Studies and was inspired by Dr. Konstantelos. It remains a part of his legacy. The program is normally presented on Stockton's campus, but in light of the terrible global pandemic crisis, we are trying something new. And we are so appreciative of you being here with us and supporting us in this brave new world. Now, small disclaimer, Zoom is a wonderful new technology, but it, just like all of us, it's not perfect. So if you happen to hear a slowdown or some speed up of speech, it's not because we've been day drinking, it's because of Zoom. So please be tolerant and understanding. Today, for the next two Sundays, you'll hear three exceptional speakers who have voluntarily given of their time to create impressive and personal presentations of three Cycladic islands. By using the latest technology, we wanted to stay connected with you, to give you an emotional lift, and a virtual trip to some beautiful Greek islands. Professor Konstantelos passed away 3 years ago, and the Friends of Hellenic Studies have tried to fulfill his wish with annual scholarships for Stockton students to experience for themselves the source of that knowledge by studying in Greece or in Cyprus. So before we start the presentation, I'd like to introduce Professor Catherine Panagakos, who will tell you a little bit about the scholarship program and how it has enhanced the lives of the students who have received the scholarship for themselves. Professor Catherine.
Good afternoon. I am Dr. Catherine Panagakos, Assistant Professor of Classical Languages at Stockton University. Before turning to our speakers, I would like to say a few words to you concerning the Friends of Hellenic Studies Scholarship. The Scholarship Committee, consisting of faculty and members of the Friends, reviews applications every spring and awards funding to support students wishing to expand their knowledge of Hellenic studies. Only full-time students with a minimum 3.0 GPA and a proven interest in Hellenic studies are awarded funding. Scholarships are at the core of the efforts of the Friends of Hellenic Studies. Over the years, tens of thousands of dollars have been given to help offset the cost of tuition, as well as send students abroad to study in Greece, Italy, Cyprus, and Turkey. Students have participated in a wide range of programs, including study tours, language programs, archaeological digs, and personal research projects. Just last year, we awarded 3 scholarships to outstanding students. Michael Martelli, a history major, studied Greek language and participated in a study tour at the Hellenic Studies Paideia program on the island of Rhodes. Robert Mazer, a classical language major, attended a 10-day extended workshop at the Attiko International Ancient Greek Drama Summer School, led by renowned dramatist Martha Frinzilla. And Frank Porcellini, a history major, participated in a study tour organized by faculty at Stockton, Aristotle University of Thessaloniki, and Tel Aviv University, entitled Nationalism, Nation States, Mass Violence, and the Transformation of Mediterranean Cities in the 20th Century. We are proud to offer funding to Stockton students dedicated to expanding their knowledge of Hellenic studies and to provide the means for these unique and life-changing experiences. Without your generous donations, none of this is possible. On behalf of all of the students who have benefited from your giving and the faculty of the Pappas Interdisciplinary Center at Stockton University, I sincerely thank you. Sas efcharistume olus. May you and your family stay safe and healthy during the current crisis.
Thank you so much, Professor Catherine. So, as you've heard, Exploring Hellenism is an annual fundraiser for Hellenic Studies scholarships. Each year, there's usually a charge for this event, since aside from the presentation, we serve traditional foods and wines from the region that's being showcased. Obviously, that is not happening here this year. Therefore, our virtual event is free. If at any time you would like to support the continuation of Hellenic Studies Scholarship, you can go to stockton.edu/give, G-I-V-E. And now a word to my Greek American friends who have signed in. Αγαπητοί φίλοι των ελληνικών γραμμάτων, απόψε συνεχίζουμε το ταξίδι μας γύρω στην Ελλάδα. Αυτό το θέμα μας το άρχισε ο αείμνηστος πατήρ και καθηγητής Δημήτριος Κωνσταντέλος. Σήμερα θα ακούσουμε για το ωραίο νησί των Κυκλάδων που λέγεται Andros. Χαιρόμαστε πολύ που συμμετέχετε μαζί μας για την πρώτη μας παρουσίαση στο Zoom και ελπίζουμε να απολαύσετε. In past years, we have explored Crete, the Peloponnesus, Cyprus, the islands of Mytilene, Chios, Kos, and the northern region of Greece called Macedonia. This year, we turn our attention to 3 Cycladic islands, Andros, Sifnos, and Paros. Today's presentation by Mrs. Catherine Karathanasis will showcase Andros. Because we are pre-recorded, if you have any questions for Catherine, please email them to me at fhs Friends Hellenic Studies, FHS, at stockton.edu. We'll select a few and forward the questions and answers to all of you who registered for this program. Kathy Karathanasis was born in Trenton, New Jersey. Both her parents are from the island of Andros, Greece. Kathy holds a Bachelor of Science degree from St. John's University and a Master of Science degree from the City University of New York. She was an educator at Tottenville High School, Staten Island, New York, and taught global history in the humanities program for 20 years. Mrs. Karathanasis has been married to her husband, Nick, for 52 years. They have 2 children and 4 grandchildren. It gives me great pleasure to introduce to you my friend, Catherine Karathanasis.
Thank you, Tula. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us on this virtual tour of my ancestral home, the island of Andros, birthplace of my parents. And I've been going back and forth to Andros for about 40 years, but I never really knew her until now. Doing my research for this report really opened my eyes, and I'm so happy to share this knowledge with you. Known by locals as the Rock because of its mountainous coastline, Andros is the only Cycladic island with waterfalls and healing springs. Where the wind carries you away, the smell of thyme and lemon flowers intoxicate you, and the waves lull you to sleep. The island is home to grand shipping families who paved the streets with marble and built imposing mansions. It is also home to authentic rural villages inhabited by humble farmers and talented craftsmen who have molded the landscape with simple and complex structures shaped by stone streets and paths and divided by walls. 3 to 4 million years ago, Evia, Andros, and the rest of the archipelago were a single landmass. Tectonic activity caused splintering and led to the creation of Andros and the other Cycladic islands. Today, there are 29 inhabited islands in the Cycladic group, including the better known Mykonos and Santorini. The Cyclades owe their name to the fact that the islands lie in a circle, or kyklos, around the sacred island of Delos, the religious and political center of the Ionian Greeks in the first half of the first millennium BC. Andros is the 8th largest island in the Aegean and the 2nd largest island in the Cyclades after Naxos. There are 84 villages and towns on the island. The area's geology, combined with the island's significant annual rainfall and snow, has created the existence of abundant springs and basins, resulting in the accumulation of significant quantities of water, something which is unusual for the Cycladic islands. It is for this reason that Andros was once also called Idrousa, the Greek word for well-watered. Andros was unique in the Aegean, the only island where water mills instead of windmills were the main source of energy. Today, a few have been preserved as monuments to pre-industrial technology. Other important geographic factors in the region are the northeasterly Etesian winds, known locally as the Meltemi. Considered the king of the winds, they blow with wild, often destructive force between sunrise and sunset. Historically, they aided the Athenians by helping destroy the Persian fleet at Salamis in 480 BC. And it is said that Alexander the Great's father, Philip, timed his military operations accordingly. Today, the Meltemi winds can be dangerous, and some yachts and ferries cannot sail under such conditions. It is believed that the name Andros is derived from the island's legendary founder, Andreas, believed to be a descendant of the gods Apollo and Dionysus. but Dionysus, the god of wine and revelry, was the island's chief deity. Throughout the ages, Andros was an attractive place for habitation due to its location along sea routes and its rich natural resources. The earliest evidence of human presence dates to the Neolithic era. 6,000 years ago, from 4,500 to 3,200 BC, a complex society occupied the settlement of Strophilas, located in western Andros. It is the largest preserved Neolithic settlement, stretching over 30 acres, and the oldest in Europe. 20 years' worth of excavations have revealed a large fortified settlement whose walls were up to 12 feet high. Unearthed artifacts have revealed much information about the people who lived there. Particularly valuable finds are the rock engravings, which also include representations of over 100 ships, the oldest in the Aegean. Ships were the great power of Strophilas, as they were in modern Andros. The Ionian Greeks reached the island in the 10th century BC. The geometric era from 900 to 700 BC was a period of great development. 3 settlements on the island's western coast grew into important habitation centers: Ipsili, Zagora, and Paliopolis. Ipsili and Zagora were founded in the second half of the 8th century BC. Temples, houses, and open-air spaces for gatherings, fortified by a 110-meter wall, dominated the Acropolis, or highest point of each city. Around 700 BC, Zagora and Ipsili were abandoned, and the inhabitants probably settled Paliopolis in the green and sheltered area on the coast near present-day Batsi. Paliopolis had good harbors and a seafront agora. The area of the old city is still evident today, submerged in the sea. From archaeological remains, including many written sources, one can see that the city was well fortified and had a marketplace, theater, altars, and temples. The Archaeological Museum of Paliopolis houses the finds from excavations in the area, including this funerary statue of a marble lion dated to 320 BC. The island's affluence was largely due to its commercial links with Evia, Attica, Corinth, other Cycladic islands, and more distant regions like northern Greece. The great Greek colonization of the Archaic period is considered one of the most important chapters of European history. From the 8th to the 5th centuries BC, Greeks settled along the coasts of the Mediterranean Sea like frogs around a pond, as Socrates mentioned. Courageous men thirsty for adventure set sail for new homes and new opportunities, much as they will do in more modern times. The colonization of the northern Aegean by settlers from the Cyclades before the mid-7th century BC is a fascinating story of this large-scale adventure. The Andrians founded colonies as far away as Eastern Macedonia. At the dawn of the classical period, Andros was included among the many Cycladic islands that succumbed to Persian rule. As of 477 BC, the island became part of the First Athenian Alliance, and after the Peloponnesian Wars became subject to the Spartans and later the Macedonians. In 133 BC, Andros passed under Roman rule, and around the 3rd century AD, Christianity began to gain ground and was established on the island, as provided by rich remains of Paleo-Christian and early Byzantine basilicas. During the Byzantine period, and as early as the 9th century, Andros was endowed with rich monastic libraries and an academy where philosophy, rhetoric, and mathematics were taught. Originating in the 4th century, Andros had an impressive silk industry, exporting the luxury fabrics along the Royal Road, a continuation of the ancient Silk Road. By the 11th century, the silk industry reached its peak with 8.5 tons of silk exported each year to Byzantine countries and the West. This prosperity was accompanied by intense church building throughout the island, including those shown here. Taxiarchis Besaria, Aios Nikolaos in Korthi, and Panachrantou in Amonakliou, among others. The abbot of this last monastery is known for his warm hospitality, and if you're lucky, he'll treat you to a serving of his famous spaghetti. The period of Frankish rule from 1207 to 1566 was marked by the establishment of 2 fortified cities to protect the island from piracy. Epano, or Upper Castro, which dominated the Corti area, and Cato, or Lower Castro, on the eastern coast of central Andros. The Lower Castro became the island's administrative center and gradually evolved into the main settlement of Hora, today's capital. In the long period during which Turkish rulers alternated with Frankish and Greek noble families in local administration, from the 16th to the 17th centuries, the population increased dramatically, and imposing castle-like structures begin to make their appearance in the countryside as the fortified homes of rich landowners and dignitaries. Shipping also increased rapidly. By 1813, the Andriot commercial fleet numbered 40 ships, traveling as far as India and the Americas. Its merchant navy was dynamic and took first place in the island's economy. By the middle of the 19th century, Andros had between 18,000 and 20,000 inhabitants, twice as many as today. When the Greek Revolution against 400 years of Turkish rule broke out in 1821, the philosopher, priest, and teacher Theophilos Kairis was the leader of the uprising in Andros. He declared the island's participation in the Greek War of Independence by raising the Greek flag and inspiring ship owners and merchants to contribute funds to build a Greek navy to combat the Ottoman Turks. Andriot military units were sent to fight both on land and sea. After the war, Andros became part of the independent Kingdom of Greece. 200 years of Greek independence will be celebrated next year in 2021. Following independence, Andros became a major center of Greek shipping and commerce. The major ship-owning families played a vital role in that development. And by 1914, Andrian registered shipping was second in Greece in terms of capacity. For many years, the shipping companies of Andros practically monopolized the transport of passengers and merchandise to America. In the years between the 2 world wars, the capital of Andros became the second largest port in Greece with respect to the number of ships registered. For almost 50 years, the shipping industry became the main source of employment for the island. Thousands of young men left for the high seas, where they became crew members on commercial and passenger ships owned by the major shipping families from Andros. These ships were also a source of the diaspora, as much of the crew tended to jump ship, especially in the Americas. One of those crew members was my husband, Nick. The shipping boom brought not only financial prosperity, but also connected the island with other important urban centers, which widened the people's cultural horizons. Andros was called Mikra Anglia, or Little England, once the great Greek shipping dynasties opened offices in London in the early 20th century. The ship owners brought back to Andros English governesses and also ideas about a welfare state. They built the island's first high school, hospital, and what is surely the most beautiful retirement home in the world, the Embiricos, overlooking Hora's lustrous Goulandri Square, decorated with busts of poets, professors, and war heroes. The cosmopolitan image of Hora is largely due to its architecture. Roads paved with gray marble are lined with neoclassical mansions, with wrought iron swans preening on balconies and family crests carved above doors. The interiors were trimmed with gold leaf ceilings and decorated with fine furnishings, crystal chandeliers, mirrors, porcelain, lamps, and fine embroideries purchased in Venice, Belgium, Marseille, and Odessa. This house is currently on the market. Asking price, €4,600,000. Any buyers out there? The smooth operation of the household was always the responsibility of the housewife, since the husbands were away at sea. The men would wire money to the national bank from where the wife would claim it, using the money to take care of the needs of the house, the demands of the children, their education, and their dowry. These women of Andros kept a neat and precise income and expense log. They were tough because being tough was their only defense against their loneliness, their responsibilities, and the society around them. They were women who had to carry the weight and prestige of their family's name and honor. Afternoon and evening hours were spent creatively. Women would gather in each other's homes, embroider, crochet, sew, or knit. They would exchange stories, recipes, banter, and gossip. When the ship's horn was heard entering the harbor, it was a cue for joy. The entire agora, or high street, rushed to welcome the men home. On name days, the relatives and friends visited to greet the host and hostess, but also to see the newly acquired furnishings. It was an opportunity for celebration, but also for showing off. In order for such houses to run smoothly, they needed domestic staff, definitely a cook and 2 housekeepers. They also had doulakia, or little servants, usually young girls from poor backgrounds descending from the villages of Andros. They would live in the house in specially arranged staff quarters. One of these little servants was my mother, who from the age of 10 was employed in the home of the wealthy, ship-owning Ulandris household. The consequences of World War II for the island were harsh, with the loss of many ships and lives and with mass destruction caused by German bombings in 1944. The war losses, the globalization of shipping, and the emigration of the ship-owning families signaled the decline of Andrian shipping. After the German occupation, the waves of migration increased rapidly. As a consequence, the population of Andros shrunk to between 9 and 10,000 inhabitants. The town of Hora, the capital of Andros, juts boldly out to sea, clinging to a spit of land flanked by 2 bays. The wealthiest residents are squeezed into Lower Castro, the medieval quarter at the tip of the headland. A colossal bronze statue of a sailor by local artist Michalis Tombros impassively watches the waves smashing against the crumbling flanks of the Venetian castle built in 1207 and almost completely destroyed in World War II. Because the island's shipping families used patronage as a show of power, today Hora has an abundance of cultural riches. There's an archaeological museum, a maritime museum, a library of some 35,000 volumes with archives dating to the 16th century, and an open-air theater where Greece's most accomplished directors stage the Andros International Festival, a summer-long celebration of the arts. The Museum of Modern Art was built by the ship-owning socialites Basil and Elise Ulandris to showcase their $3 billion modern art collection. It has established its reputation with blockbuster summer shows by artists such as Picasso, Braque, Miro, and more. The main street of Hora was always called the Agora and has the same meaning today as it did in ancient times, a place of commerce and exchange and somewhere to see and be seen. Today, a walk in the Agora would not be complete without a stop at one of the many sweet shops for a strong coffee and an almond cake. Ever so slowly, a gentle kind of traveler is now making inroads into the island's interior. Etched into the densely wooded hills and ravines ribboned with streams are stone walls known as emacies, creating a network of paths just wide enough for a donkey. Many of these trails have been cleared and waymarked, opening up miles of old footpaths. Divided by 4 towering mountain ranges, the landscape is surprisingly varied and the weather can change around each bend. Watermills, dovecotes, watchtowers, and stone arch bridges materialize in misty villages. Every village has a communal carved marble fountain fed by ice-cold mountain water. Venturing deeper into the mountains, fountains give way to waterfalls, cascading through forests of chestnut, white poplar, oak, and maple. The mineral water from Sariza, the island's most famous spring, is said to be a miracle cure for kidney stones. At Menitas village, the marble lion-headed fountains are mythical. The village takes its name from the Maenads, nymphs of the god Dionysus, and legend says that they are the ancient springs of the god of good times. The impressive network of hiking paths on Andros is estimated to exceed 185 miles in length. The routes are maintained by regional and local authorities with the assistance of volunteers from around the world. Andros is a hiking heaven, and during one of my visits there, I took advantage of that, choosing one of the easier walks, a distance of about 3 miles through the heart of the Livadia Valley. Beginning at Kairi Square, I descended the long paved stairs towards Paraporti Beach and passed the impressive Panagia Theoskiapasti Church on the left. I then followed the road extending parallel to the estuary and wetland of Megalos Potamos, or Big River. High stone walls and cypress trees mark the boundaries of the Livadia groves, where one can see an amazing variety of citrus fruit. After about 900 meters, I passed by an impressive vertical stone wall called Bastuni by the locals, and the remains of the old stone arched bridge of Livadia. Continuing straight and crossing the asphalt road coming from Hora towards Corti, I took the paved path past a lovely village. It was at this point that I got lost, but not for very long. Eventually, I recognized the imposing church of Ayos Konstantinos and stopped at my cousin Chariklia's home in Livadia, where I was warmly welcomed and immediately fed. In no time, she whipped up a delicious meal, which included an andriat omelet or furtalla made with sausages, potatoes, and eggs. In June 2016, we revisited Andros, this time with our daughter Reina and grandson Nico. Retracing my family's roots, we went to Hora first. At the bottom of the steps descending from the Museum of Modern Art, a narrow road leads to a small church built on top of a rock, which enters the sea like a small peninsula. The church is Agia Thalassini, the saint that protects the sailors and their families. In the distance, one sees the famous landmark of Andros, the Turlitis Lighthouse. Constructed in 1897, it is the only one in Europe built on a rock in the sea. Above the church is a row of houses built on the edge of the rocks. It was in one of these houses that my father lived as a child. While still a teenager, he left his home and family, like so many other young men from his island, to seek his fortune, eventually settling in the United States. From Hora, we visited the small village of Sineti, where my mother was born. As you can see, not much is left of her home. But for me and my family, visiting there was a very emotional experience. From Hora, we visited the small village of Sineti, where a folk museum curated by my cousin is housed in the village school that my mother attended as a child. The classrooms have been converted into a typical Andriot home filled with the furnishings, utensils, and tools of the previous centuries, and taking us back to the past. I'd like to end today by reading a poem about Andros written by her native son, Andreas Embiricos. It's entitled Augmentation. It sometimes happens that one kisses the hand of a morning reflection in the silence of a landscape. Standing motionless with sealed mouth before the city awakens with 1,000 fountains to lift the veils and reveal the heart of the city, raising the fingers of the sleepers one by one toward the row of boats that sail the streets, laden with perfumes, treasures, and provisions from the remote lands, like the glance of a woman daydreaming. I hope you enjoyed today's presentation as much as I enjoyed sharing what I learned about Andros. If you are so inclined, the 2013 movie Little England, or Micra Anglia, does an excellent job of portraying Andros during the interwar period. It is a drama romance revolving around two sisters and can be viewed for free online at tubitv.com. Thank you, and please stay safe.
Thank you, Kathy, for sharing your personal journey and your experiences on the lovely island of Andros. I want to give a special thank you to Mark Pizzata, our Zoom trainer and support guy at Stockton, without whom none of this could have happened. And if you have not checked it out yet, please take a look at the traditional island dance link that I sent out to you with the program link, as well as the recipe for frutalla. Now, in closing, I want to ask a question to all of you out there. How many of you like moussaka? How many of you like pasticcio? Well, guess what? The ancient Greeks did not invent those recipes. There was a Greek chef from the island of Sifnos who about 100 years ago went to study the culinary arts in France, and upon returning to his homeland, forever changed what we think of today as Greek cuisine. Maria Kazantzis will tell you all about who he is and many other fascinating facts when she discusses the island of Sifnos next Sunday, May 10th, that's Mother's Day, at 2 p.m. So have your mezze and wine or ouzo ready, and please join us again. Until then, yassas.